So picture a morning that probably looks a lot like yours or, your neighbor's.
Right.
It's a chaotic, slightly messy, but completely relatable family morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Wednesday, you're rushing out the door, and the primary objective of the day is really just to get your 4-year-old daughter into the car so you can go grab donuts before her big dance recital.
Yeah, standard suburban morning.
Exactly. The absolute picture of suburban domesticity. Your husband is standing in the garage, he's wrangling the 23-month-old toddler, waving goodbye. And then, in a literal fraction of a second, that everyday driveway turns into a scene of just suffocating terror.
Oh, wow.
A blind spot, a moving vehicle, a mother behind the wheel, and her toddler under the car. I mean, it is, without a doubt, a parent's absolute worst nightmare.
It really is. And, it's the kind of trauma that usually sends a family retreating into total privacy. You lean on therapists, you cling to your closest relatives, because time just stops in those moments.
Right.
The biological imperative is purely about survival and protection. Everything else fades away.
Which is exactly what makes what happened next so incomprehensible to the average person. Because instead of retreating, instead of, calling a therapist in the aftermath, the mother's very first instinct, while her 23-month-old is literally still lying in a hospital bed with a fractured pelvis,
Yeah.
her instinct is to open up her smartphone, select the appropriate photo filters, and create a 15-slide Instagram carousel documenting the accident for thousands of strangers.
It's an incredibly jarring pivot from private agony straight to public content. And that pivot is exactly what we were unpacking in today's deep dive.
Yeah, it's a lot to get into.
It is. We're going to be exploring the wild, highly lucrative, and honestly almost completely unregulated world of the momfluencer economy.
Right.
To do this, we're looking at a convergence of sources. We've got real-time social media backlash, local news reports, and a deeply forensic sociological study called Ethical Fractures in the Digital Domestic.
That report is fascinating, by the way.
It really is, because the goal here is to figure out what happens when that traditional boundary between a family's private life and a commercial audience just entirely collapses.
And look, if you have ever, double tap a cute baby video online, or if you've bought a specific brand of organic snacks because a family vlogger recommended it.
Which so many of us have.
Exactly. Or honestly, if you've just felt that weird modern societal pressure to perfectly document your own kid's life, then you are part of this ecosystem. Today, we are attempting to map out the exact border between building a supportive digital community and the outright exploitation of trauma.
Right. Where is that line?
Exactly. And we're going to look at a fundamental contradiction, which is how we are raising a generation of children where digital privacy is somehow a luxury afforded only to runaways. While kids in supposedly loving influencer homes are subjected to voluntary surveillance.
It's a really heavy contradiction. And to really map that out, I think we have to reconstruct the timeline of April 15th, 2026.
Let's do it.
Because the mechanics of what happened in that driveway are crucial to understanding the fallout. So the mother in question is Kelly Hopton-Jones. She's a 36-year-old influencer behind the brand Hillside Farmhouse.
And she has a decent following, right?
Yeah, she has an audience of over 65,000 followers. So her husband, Brian, is staying home with their 23-month-old son, Henry. Brian helps their 4-year-old Lily into Kelly's car, and then he stands in the garage with Henry to wave goodbye.
And as she puts the car in gear to pull out, the child moves. He wanders behind the car directly into a blind spot, and she runs over her own son.
Yeah.
I mean, the visceral horror of that realization is something I just cannot even fathom.
It's unimaginable. And the immediate response in the neighborhood is, as you expect, frantic. Neighbors rush over. They physically take the 4-year-old daughter, Lily, so the parents can deal with the emergency.
Which is good.
Right. But here, the sequence of events takes a turn that the internet later heavily scrutinizes. Because rather than calling 911 for an ambulance, which is the standard medical protocol for pediatric vehicle trauma, right? It ensures paramedics can stabilize the spine, manage potential internal bleeding on the way to the hospital. But instead of that, Kelly and Brian load Henry into a car and drive him to the emergency room themselves.
Wait, I mean, making a transportation decision like that in the middle of a blind panic is massive. If there was an internal hemorrhage, just the jostling of a standard car ride could be catastrophic.
Exactly. It's incredibly risky. But when they arrive at the ER, the medical findings are astounding. I mean, the doctors literally use the word miracle.
Wow.
They run a full battery of tests. X-rays of Henry's legs, chest, and neck all come back normal. A CT scan reveals no internal organ damage, no spinal cord injury,
That is unbelievable.
and neurological exams show zero signs of head trauma or cognitive impairment.
So it really is an absolute miracle.
It is. He's not completely unscathed, though. The impact left him with serious pelvic fractures that require significant healing time, along with some severe abrasions across his body. But the prognosis given to the parents is essentially, he is hurt, but he will fully recover.
I mean, the relief in that room must have been intoxicating. You think you've killed your child, and then science tells you he's going to walk again.
Yeah.
But this is the pivot point. This is where it gets crazy. On that exact same day, April 15th, while Henry is literally still attached to monitors in the hospital, Kelly posts that massive, highly curated carousel to her Instagram grid.
Right. And the visual composition of this post, which is analyzed really thoroughly in the ethical fractures report, it's deliberately constructed.
How so?
Well, it relies heavily on direct hospital imagery. So followers see photos of Kelly holding Henry's bandaged hand with the hospital ID bracelets prominently displayed. There are these wide shots of a tiny 23-month-old toddler just engulfed by a hospital bed and all this medical equipment.
And the caption doesn't read like a quick, update for friends either. It's this multi-paragraph narrative essay.
Oh, yeah, it's very long.
She walks her followers through the terrifying what-ifs. She frames his survival as a divine miracle, and then she executes this hard pivot into a public service announcement.
Right, the new rule.
Yeah, she announces a new, non-negotiable family safety rule about hand-holding around vehicles, telling her audience, do not assume they know or will stay where you last saw them.
So she converts what is essentially a near-fatal personal failing into an instructional moment for her audience.
But let's slow down here for a second, because I want to challenge the immediate wave of judgment that just crashed down on her online.
Okay, let's look at that.
Let's look at the psychology of modern parenting. Because millennial and Gen Z parents are statistically the most socially isolated generation of parents in history. We don't have that traditional geographic village anymore.
That's a really good point.
Right. Like if I get into a minor fender bender in a parking lot, my hands are shaking too much to even type a text message. So the idea of sitting in a sterile room, picking out a filter, and writing an essay while my kid has a broken pelvis feels completely alien to me.
Right.
But is it possible we're misinterpreting her actions? Like for someone who lives 500 miles away from her family, whose entire career, social circle, and daily interaction are all mediated through a smartphone. Maybe the internet is her village. Is this just her version of calling a best friend to process the trauma?
So the ethical fractures report anticipates that exact defense, actually.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, and they break down why it falls short. They introduce this concept called the influencer reflex.
The influencer reflex.
Right. And it isn't just about seeking comfort. It's a deeply ingrained habitual urge to convert a lived experience into public-facing, monetizable content.
Wow.
The boundary between the private self experiencing the trauma and the public brand managing a narrative, it becomes entirely porous.
So the reflex to post overrides the reflex to just, sit quietly with the trauma.
Exactly. And the report identifies specific strategic and psychological motivations for posting while the crisis is still active. First is narrative control.
Okay.
In the high-stakes attention economy, the first person to speak sets the frame. By posting immediately, she frames herself as a miraculously lucky mother who made a tragic but relatable mistake.
I see.
Right. It preempts the narrative that she was a negligent parent who ran over her toddler. She owns the story before, say, a neighbor or an ER nurse can leak it to a gossip forum.
Wow. So she's basically treating a driveway accident like a corporate PR crisis.
Essentially, yes. Second, there are algorithm economics at play. Social media algorithms technically operate by rewarding dwell time and interaction, and high-emotion, high-stakes content, especially involving children in danger, that guarantees a massive surge in engagement.
So the algorithm essentially subsidizes trauma.
That's a perfect way to put it. And third, addressing your point about the digital village, it is about surrogate validation. That post received over 38,000 likes.
Jeez. 38,000.
Right. That is 38,000 algorithmic pats on the back, functioning as this psychological buffer against the crushing guilt of what she did in that driveway.
But the currency used to buy that psychological buffer is her toddler's most vulnerable moment. I mean, Kelly's driveway incident shows us what happens when an acute, sudden tragedy is fed into the content machine.
Right.
And if she were just, a local real estate agent or an accountant, the backlash might have been just a localized whisper. But the reason this story exploded into a national controversy is because of her specific professional background,
Yes, this is key.
which brings us to an incredible collision of clinical authority and digital validation.
Exactly. And this introduces what the sociological report terms the expert paradox. Because Kelly isn't just a mom posting cute outfits. Before she transitioned to full-time content creation in 2025, she was a registered pediatric nurse practitioner.
Wait, a licensed medical professional who specialized in children?
Yes. Her entire online empire was constructed on this aura of clinical authority. She promoted clean living, she dispensed pediatric health advice, and she utilized vulnerability as a brand strategy.
Oh, wow.
She even wrote a children's book called Someday that detailed her struggles with infertility. She established a profound parasocial contract with her audience.
And for anyone unfamiliar with the term, a parasocial relationship is that one-sided psychological bond where a viewer feels like they genuinely know a media figure, right?
Right,
While the
well-
creator doesn't even know the viewer exists.
Exactly.
We used to have it with television stars, but family vloggers kind of weaponize it. They look directly into the camera, they show you their messy kitchens, and they essentially say, "We're friends."
Yeah.
So her followers didn't just see a mom, they saw a trusted medical confidant.
And that's why the professional dissonance here is so staggering, because a pediatric nurse practitioner undergoes rigorous training regarding patient privacy laws, like HIPAA. They understand, way better than a layperson, the severe, life-altering implications of a toddler sustaining a fractured pelvis. And crucially, they are drilled in emergency triage.
Which means calling 911.
Exactly. You stabilize the patient, assess for internal bleeding, and prioritize medical intervention over public relations. But critics argued her influencer persona had completely consumed and overwritten her nurse persona.
It's almost like a deep-sea diver experiencing nitrogen narcosis. The pressure of the algorithm is just so overwhelmingly heavy, and the dopamine from those 38,000 likes is so intoxicating that they lose all sense of which way is up.
That's a great analogy.
The clinical judgment just evaporates, and suddenly taking a stylized photo of a hospitalized toddler feels like the logical next step.
And that evaporation of judgment is exactly what triggered the public forensic breakdown. And it's interesting because this didn't happen in the mainstream media first. The investigation happened on Reddit, specifically in a forum called r/blog/snark.
Oh yeah, I mean, Reddit communities like that have essentially become a modern-day open-source child protective services.
They really have.
Historically, society relied on teachers, or pediatricians, or physical neighbors, to spot when something was wrong in a home. Now, there is a crowdsourced jury of thousands of strangers. They are analyzing the background of every single Instagram story, zooming in on reflections in the microwave, tracking timelines, looking for moral infractions.
Right.
It's a digital neighborhood watch, but with the terrifying power to completely bankrupt your family.
And the ethics jury on Reddit systematically dismantled her narrative. They completely bypassed the miracle framing and focused purely on the mechanical and medical realities.
What do they point out?
Well, first, the emergency protocol. Why, with your advanced pediatric medical training, did you bypass 9/11 and drive a trauma victim in a personal vehicle?
A completely valid question.
Second, the mechanics of the incident. How does a 23-month-old maneuver behind a reversing vehicle when a second parent is physically present in the garage, specifically tasked with watching it?
So they completely rejected the whole accidents happen defense.
Absolutely. They viewed it as a fundamental failure of basic supervision. And third, the timing. The consensus on Reddit was that executing a 15-slide Instagram dump on the exact day your child is run over is not a trauma response. It is a calculated crisis management strategy.
The legal reality versus the digital reality is fascinating here too, because the sociological report notes that in Texas, a driveway backover accident is rarely prosecuted criminally unless authorities find clear evidence of substance impairment or gross negligence.
Right. Legally, it's categorized as a horrific accident.
But the law almost doesn't matter anymore because Kelly is now facing the commercial court of public opinion.
And the influencer economy relies entirely on brand safety. Corporate sponsors, the baby food companies, the stroller manufacturers, the organic clothing lines, they are incredibly risk-averse.
Oh, totally. They'll drop you in a second.
They will flee from controversy at the slightest provocation. So the Reddit rebellion isn't going to put Kelly in a state penitentiary, but the economic exile could cost her hundreds of thousands of dollars in canceled contracts.
But the algorithm doesn't just exploit sudden accidents, though. It actively demands a constant stream of messy, relatable chaos. And that relentless demand can push creators to manufacture or casually hide chronic neglect.
Yes.
Which brings us from Kelly's driveway in Texas to another medically trained influencer in Utah.
Right, we are looking at Hannah Hyatt, who is widely known online as Nurse Hannah.
Another nurse turned content creator, operating under the handle at Hannah Bennington. So in October 2024, she uploads a video designed to go viral under the banner of hyper-relatable mom life is a disaster content.
And it really was a disaster.
The video showcases 17 dirty diapers. 17. They are strewn across her coffee table, abandoned on the staircase, tossed beside her bed.
Just everywhere.
Everywhere. She claims this massive biological mess is the result of just 24 hours of solo parenting, her 2-year-old son, James, and a newborn. She even defends the mess in a People magazine interview, stating that the transition from 1 child to 2 was brutal, though she considered it easier than going from 0 to 1.
The public reaction to the 17 diapers was deeply polarized.
I can imagine.
Yeah, one faction of the audience fiercely defended her. They argued that the newborn phase is just pure, unadulterated survival mode where housekeeping ceases to exist.
Sure.
But a growing counterfaction saw a massive, glaring red flag regarding basic hygiene and executive function.
And to clarify for anyone unfamiliar, executive function is the set of cognitive skills that help us plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks. It's basically the brain's management system.
Right.
When you have 17 soiled diapers scattered across eating and sleeping surfaces, critics weren't just seeing a messy house. They were seeing a total collapse of a parent's executive function, broadcast for entertainment.
And the situation escalated from an internet debate to a genuine police matter shortly after, due to a subsequent video.
What was in that one?
Well, Hannah posted a clip that she quickly deleted, but as we know, the internet archives everything instantly.
Oh, yeah. Nothing is gone forever.
Exactly. In this clip, Hannah is handing a mundane item to her 2-year-old son in a grocery store. As she reaches toward him, the toddler physically noticeably flinches in fear.
A reactive wince. Like the kind of flinch that implies the child anticipates being struck.
Yes, and the viewer reaction was immediate and deeply alarmed. The audience interpreted that flinch as a conditioned response to a hostile environment.
What did she respond?
Her defense was swift and highly dismissive. She addressed her followers, calling their concern, quote, insane.
Wow.
She claimed her husband, Braxton, and her son playfully scare each other all the time, framing it as roughhousing. She then offered a quote that perfectly captures the hypocrisy of the medium. She said, "You can't believe everything you see on social media. You just can't."
The staggering irony of that. A woman who literally monetizes the parasocial trust of her audience, who makes a living off people believing her clean living tips and relatable struggles, turning around and telling them they are foolish for believing their own eyes when the content reveals something dark.
Exactly. But the Digital Neighborhood Watch didn't accept her explanation. This crossed the barrier from Reddit speculation into real-world intervention. The Ogden, Utah Police Department publicly confirmed they had opened an active investigation into Hannah Hyatt.
Wait, an actual police investigation?
Yes, functioning in tandem with multiple reports filed to Child Protective Services by her own viewers.
So we have a clear pattern emerging here. Kelly Hopton-Jones and Hannah Hyatt. 2 highly educated women, both trained in the medical field to protect life and ensure basic hygiene, both failing spectacularly in the public eye when it comes to the safety and dignity of their own children.
This is a very specific phenomenon.
Is there something about the influencer economy that specifically attracts people who want to present themselves as authorities, only to have the pressure of constant content creation dismantle their actual judgment?
The sociological analysis points to the difference in how validation is delivered. So, in a clinical hospital setting, a nurse derives professional satisfaction from stabilizing a patient. It is private, methodical, strictly regulated, and the reward is intrinsic or quietly acknowledged.
Right.
But in the influencer economy, validation is public, instantaneous, and quantified in thousands of likes and thousands of dollars. The algorithm demands a specific formula. It wants you to be an aspirational expert, but it also demands vulnerability, messiness, and quote-unquote authenticity.
Which is an impossible balance.
Exactly. The pressure to perfectly execute this tightrope walk creates profound cognitive dissonance.
It's like the camera lens literally distorts their reality.
Mm.
A biohazardous living room looks like a quirky, relatable reel. A toddler's hospital bed looks like a teaching moment and a sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah.
The content stream becomes the primary reality, and the child's actual physical reality becomes the secondary byproduct.
And The hypersensitivity of the digital audience, this rapid-fire trigger to call CPS over a video clip, to analyze a diaper count frame by frame, it might seem like paranoia to some.
Sure, it sounds extreme.
But it didn't develop in a vacuum. The internet is traumatized because they recently watched a worst-case scenario play out in real time. A case that proved the haters, the people screaming that something sinister was happening behind the vlog camera, were entirely correct all along.
We are talking about the darkest, most horrific timeline of family vlogging. The absolute collapse of the 8 Passengers channel and the legacy of Ruby Frank.
The history here is essential to understanding the current cultural anxiety. Ruby Frank launched 8 Passengers on YouTube in 2015. She and her husband, Kevin, documented the daily lives of their 6 children.
They were massive, right?
Huge. They amassed 2.5 million subscribers. They generated over 1 billion views. They were unquestioned royalty in the family vlogging industry.
And the warning signs weren't hidden in some secret diary. They were hiding in plain sight, fully broadcast, monetized, and algorithmically boosted to millions of people for years.
That's the scariest part. As early as 2020, viewers were organizing petitions and begging platform moderators for intervention.
Over what, specifically?
Well, for example, Ruby posted a video casually, almost cheerfully, detailing how her 15-year-old son had been banished from his bedroom and forced to sleep on a beanbag chair for 7 months as a behavioral punishment.
7 months.
7 months. In another highly controversial vlog, she proudly admitted she sent her 6-year-old daughter to school with no lunch as discipline for forgetting to pack it herself.
A 6-year-old.
Right. And when the school called, concerned about a hungry first grader, Ruby outright refused to bring the child food.
And the psychological mechanism at play here is fascinating and terrifying, because YouTube's monetization structure legally shields the platform from the content they host, but the algorithm directly incentivized Frank to escalate. Strict parenting got views. Outrage got comments. The platform rewarded the escalation of cruelty with higher ad revenue. And every time the internet raised an alarm, Ruby and Kevin would sit on their couch, look into the camera, and gaslight their audience. They'd say, "You don't understand our parenting. This is taken out of context. You're just haters who don't understand discipline."
And the platform largely let it slide, protecting the revenue stream. But the reality behind the camera eventually shattered the facade. On August 30th, 2023, the abuse reached a harrowing climax.
It's just so awful.
In Ivins, Utah, Ruby's 12-year-old son managed a desperate escape. He climbed out of a window and ran to a neighbor's house, pleading for food and water. The neighbor immediately recognized the severe state of the child and called the police.
Thank God for that neighbor.
Yes. The boy was emaciated. He was covered in open wounds. His extremities showed severe lacerations from being bound with duct tape and rope.
And the detail from the police report that completely haunts me, they discovered that a mixture of cayenne pepper and honey had been used to dress his open wounds.
It's horrific.
It is medieval torture. And when authorities searched the premises, they found her 10-year-old daughter inside, also severely malnourished and abused.
The fallout was swift and legally devastating. The house where the abuse occurred belonged to Jody Hildebrandt, a counselor operating a life coaching business called Connexions.
Right, they had partnered up.
Yes, following a separation from her husband, Ruby had deeply partnered with Hildebrandt. They utilized an extreme, distorted religious justification for the torture, claiming the children were possessed by evil and the abuse was necessary to expel sin.
Which is just beyond comprehension.
Ultimately, Ruby Frank pled guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. In February 2024, she was sentenced to serve between 4 and 30 years in a Utah state prison.
Good.
Kevin Franke filed for divorce, numerous civil lawsuits are ongoing, and her eldest daughter, Sherry, published a memoir in 2025 titled The House of My Mother, meticulously detailing the decades of systemic abuse.
So we have to connect the underlying logic here. Kelly Hopton-Jones in the driveway is not starving her children. She's binding them with duct tape.
No, she isn't. But the Ethical Fractures report makes a vital thematic bridge between the two. The sociological community views Kelly's case as a soft pathology of the exact same disease that infected Ruby Frank.
A soft pathology.
Right. The core disease is the lethal blurring of the boundary between a parent's fundamental biological duty to protect their child and an influencer's perceived commercial duty to provide engaging content to an audience. The moment you begin viewing your child as a raw material for content, the ethical boundary is breached.
And because the audience has been so traumatized by the Frank case, they no longer give creators the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
The public now views any monetization of a child's pain, even an accidental broken pelvis in a driveway,
Hmm.
through the dark, paranoid lens of what happened to the 8 passengers' kids.
Which sets up this bizarre sociological dynamic of how the creator class reacts when one of their own faces the mob. Because you would expect other influencers to aggressively distance themselves, right?
Yeah.
To condemn the behavior to protect their own brand safety.
Right, but they do the exact opposite. They form this impenetrable protective bubble around the accused. Because deep down, every single family vlogger knows they are just one poorly worded caption or one momentary lapse in supervision away from becoming the internet's villain of the week.
We observed this phenomenon clearly in the comment section of Kelly's hospital post. Emily Kaiser, a highly successful 27-year-old influencer, left a public comment underneath Kelly's photos of her injured son.
What did she say?
Emily wrote, "I'm so incredibly sorry," accompanied by a bandaged heart emoji.
Now, out of context, it reads like generic internet sympathy. But context changes the entire gravity of the comment.
It does, because Emily Kaiser is intimately familiar with the worst-case scenario of parental lapses in supervision. In May of 2025, Emily's 3-year-old son, Trig, tragically drowned in their family's backyard swimming pool.
An unfathomable, devastating loss.
And in the aftermath, Emily modeled the exact behavior critics wished Kelly had adopted. She completely stepped away from the internet. She took a silent 6-month hiatus to grieve.
Which is the normal human response.
Yes. And when she finally returned in November 2025, she issued a statement taking full, agonizing accountability for the tragedy. She publicly stated, "One of the hardest lessons I carry is that a permanent pool fence could have saved his life."
Wow. So she didn't blame the universe. She owned the mechanical mistake that cost her child's life.
She did.
So when someone with Emily Kaiser's specific tragic history steps into the comment section of Kelly Hopton-Jones's post, she brings massive cultural weight to the conversation.
The sociological report analyzes this interaction as a powerful internal signal within the influencer community. Emily's comment dictates the tone to her peers. Kelly should be treated with grace, not forensic scrutiny.
Interesting.
It highlights a deep, unspoken, there but for the grace of God go I mentality among creators. They are all attempting to film aesthetically pleasing lives while simultaneously keeping toddlers alive, and they are existentially terrified of being the next one to make a fatal mechanical error.
Okay, I want to shift our perspective entirely now. Because we have spent the last 45 minutes dissecting the lives of children who never asked to be public figures. Kids whose absolute worst, most physically vulnerable moments, fractured pelvises, severe starvation, diaper blowouts, were broadcast to millions of strangers for algorithmic profit.
Yeah.
I want to look at the exact antithesis of this system. I want to look at children who were saved by absolute sacred privacy.
The contrast is essential to understanding the value of what is actually being lost here. Consider an event from Florida on January 2, 2023. A firefighter is working the overnight shift at his station. At 2 a.m., a silent alarm triggers, indicating that someone has utilized the Safe Haven baby box installed on the exterior of the building.
And for those who don't know, these are climate-controlled, secure incubators built into the walls of fire stations and hospitals. They exist so a parent in absolute crisis can safely and completely anonymously surrender a newborn without any questions asked and without fear of criminal prosecution.
Right. So the firefighter opens the exterior box from the inside of the station. Lying there, wrapped in a pink blanket, is a healthy newborn baby girl left with a single bottle.
Oh, wow.
Now, this specific firefighter and his wife had been battling infertility for over a decade and were actively registered in the state's adoption system. He transports the infant to the local hospital for a medical evaluation, leaves a note explaining his family's desperate hope to adopt, and begins the legal process.
And they get her, right.
Yes, by April of that year, he and his wife formally adopted the baby, naming her Zoe.
The profound beauty of that story rests entirely on the anonymity of the biological mother's choice. We do not know her name, we do not know her trauma, her financial situation, or her emotional state.
We know nothing.
Right. She did not monetize her crisis. She did not post a 15-slide Instagram carousel explaining her difficult decision to her followers. She utilized the shield of total, impenetrable privacy to protect her child's life, and a family was born in the quiet hours of the night because of it.
And we have another historical example that is even more striking in its active assertion of privacy. The case of Alicia Navarro.
Oh, this one is wild. In September 2019, 14-year-old Alicia Navarro disappeared from her home in Glendale, Arizona. She left a handwritten note stating she was running away but promised she would eventually return.
Right.
For 4 excruciating years, Her mother, Jessica Nunez, lived in agony, utilizing every media outlet, podcast, and social media platform to campaign, search, and keep her daughter's name alive.
Then, in July 2023, 4 years after she vanished, an 18-year-old woman casually walks into a local police station in a small town in Montana near the Canadian border. It is Alicia.
Just walks right in?
Just walks in. She is safe, she is healthy, and she is unharmed. Local police confirm she is alone and not being held against her will. Her mother releases a deeply emotional video, thanking God and the community for the miracle of her daughter's return.
But there's one critical, fascinating detail in the mechanics of Alicia's return. Do you know what the very first thing this 18-year-old girl did when she walked up to the desk in that police station?
She explicitly asked the authorities to remove her from the National Missing Children's Registry, and she formally requested complete and total privacy from the media as she cooperated with the police investigation.
She asked for privacy. I mean, think about the profound, staggering irony of this. We're looking at a central thesis for our modern era. Alicia Navarro, a teenager who has spent 4 developmental years completely off the digital grid, walks out of the wilderness, and her very first psychological instinct is to ask the authorities to protect her privacy.
It's incredible.
She inherently understands that her story is incredibly valuable. She knows the true crime podcasters and the media are salivating for the details. And she looks at them and says, no, this trauma belongs to me.
She claimed ownership of her own narrative.
Yes, exactly. Meanwhile, little Henry Hopton Jones, at 23 months old, gets run over by a 2-ton vehicle in his own driveway, and his highly educated, medically trained adult mother immediately uploads photos of his battered body to 65,000 strangers on the internet. What does it say about the psychological rot of our culture? That a runaway teenager has a vastly superior, more mature grasp on the inherent value of digital privacy than adult parents living in luxury suburban homes.
It indicates that the incentive structures of our digital culture are fundamentally broken and actively working against human nature. When we synthesize the sociological report with these historical cases, what becomes glaringly clear is the absolute necessity for a digital bill of rights for the children of influencers.
A digital bill of rights, I like that.
We need one. The current ecosystem relies entirely on parents to self-regulate, but as we've seen with the expert paradox, the financial, algorithmic, and psychological rewards of oversharing are simply too powerful. The influencer reflex consistently overrides the protective parental reflex.
Because right now, the only regulatory bodies stepping in to protect these kids is the Reddit mob. And a Reddit mob isn't jurisprudence, it's just outsourced, highly volatile outrage.
Precisely. If we distill the long journey we've taken through these sources today, the core takeaway is that the internet has aggressively, perhaps permanently, eroded the private sphere of the family.
Yeah, it's gone.
Whether we are analyzing the horrific, calculated criminal abuse of Ruby Frank, or the investigated, chaotic negligence of Hannah Hyatt's 17 diapers, or the deep ethical dissonance of Kelly Hopton Jones monetizing a driveway accident while her toddler is in a hospital bed, the common denominator is always the child.
Always.
In every single scenario, children are functioning as non-consenting props in a digital performance directed, produced, and monetized by their parents.
And this is the part where we have to hold a mirror up to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we love to point the finger at Kelly or Hannah or Ruby. It feels good to be the judge.
Oh, it does.
But we have to look at our own algorithms. The algorithm is not a sentient monster. It is a mirror of human desire.
Yeah.
It only rewards this trauma sharing. It only pushes the hospital bed photos to the top of the feed because we click on them. We engage. We slow our scroll. We are the ones providing the 38,000 likes that act as the psychological buffer against real-world horror. If we are watching and commenting and buying the organic snacks these parents are selling, we have to ask ourselves, are we the captive audience to a digital tragedy? Are we the ones funding the exploitation?
It is a deeply uncomfortable reality to accept. When a child's most traumatic, physically painful moments become the most valuable performing assets in a parent's financial portfolio, the audience that pays for that portfolio bears an undeniable share of the moral responsibility.
I will leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over, something we haven't explicitly covered but that honestly haunts the edges of every single story we've discussed today. Think about the sheer terrifying permanence of the internet. 10, 15 years from now, little Henry Hopton Jones is going to be a high school student. James Hyatt is going to be a teenager. The surviving Franca children will be adults trying to build their own independent lives, apply for jobs, and form relationships. And one day, they are going to sit down at a computer and Google their own names.
And the internet never, ever forgets.
They won't just find their cute childhood photos. They will find the forensic sociological reports. They will find the Reddit threads analyzing their parents' neglect. They will find the comment sections. They will see exactly how thousands of strangers debated their broken bones, their dirty diapers, their starvation in real time, while their parents chased engagement metrics and cashed the sponsorship checks. When that generation of entirely exploited children finally logs on to tell their side of the story, what are they going to say to us, the audience who sat back, double-tapped, and watched it happen?